Dang those.
I know they have the best cupcakes.
Yeah.
We're on our way back down to Steve's again.
We are.
He's been building some more dioramas, and this time he's taken another part of the railroad and turned it into yet another diorama. And this one he's sending off to Las Vegas to live with his daughter.
Wow.
Because the town in question was named after her, Nora.
Nora.
And so she gets part of the Village of Nowhere. No, she got part of the Village of Nowhere and Shoehorn Gulch,
right,
which is part of the community of Nora. So all that's been dismantled, and it's going into her little diorama that she's getting.
Yeah.
So check this out, more dismantling of Steve's railroad and turning it into dioramas. Well, this is, of course, Steve's railroad. We haven't been operating it as much these days because it's just harder to do.
That's right.
Al used to clean the tracks and so on, but without Al to clean the tracks, every time we try to run something, there's always something fouling in some place, and so we've just been sort of getting away from running it, which is a shame because half the fun of having a railroad is running it.
I like this little Shay. That was always a cute little train.
And this little mining district here. Al went through and counted up all the buildings in this area, and as I recall, he came up with over 250.
Oh!
And we weren't quite sure because every time you'd start counting them, Steve would build another one before you got it counted. And it's easier to count now because he's been taking it apart. And it's a shame to see, but we understand why he's doing it. He's trying to break all this up into these smaller dioramas because he's afraid that he won't be able to operate the railroad, and then he's afraid that after he passes away, nobody will want to keep it, and it'll just get busted up and thrown away. So by chopping it up into smaller bits and pieces and then giving those to family and friends, the assumption is that all of this stuff will live on for quite some period of time, probably outlive all of us. That's the hope anyway. So this is the first of the dioramas that he created, and he gave it to his old boss because he named it after him, Ferran. Now, last time I said that was Josh Ferran because Josh is actually his son. The guy's actual name is Troy Ferran, who got this, his old boss. The boat shop here is called Ferran Boat Works and Furniture Repair. It's all part of the Village of Nowhere. The Lake Inferior Inn here was also part of that, and that's going to be another diorama. Now this is the second diorama. This one's going to his daughter Nora.
Well, look at that. That is so cool.
Isn't that pretty? This was part of the layout that she really liked, and in part because it was named after her. But it was a little village called Shoehorn Gulch in the Nora mining district. And so Steve felt that she should get that. She lives in Las Vegas, and so she packed this up, and now it's living in her place in Las Vegas.
That's so cool.
Shoehorn Gulch was also one of my favorite places. Look at that.
That is just awesome. It looks very real.
And it just turned out so neat the way the 30-inch gauge railroad meandered up through the middle of the houses there. I just loved the little Shoehorn Gulch. Everyone did. The 30-inch gauge was named after it, the Shoehorn Gulch Railroad. This is what Shoehorn Gulch looks like now after it's been slightly taken apart.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's a shame to see it like that, but that's the nature of it. A lot of the little structures have been put on the diorama, along with some other buildings from some other locations.
I'd sure hate to have Steve on the Zoning and Planning Commission.
Yeah, look at the ladder up to the top of the sand tower there. I love it. It's very whimsical, but that sanding tower is one of the funnest sand towers I've ever seen on a railroad. It's just fun. As always, there's a lot of figures on the diorama. These two guys are doing something in the sandbox. I suspect they're playing in the sandbox.
That could be.
You know, what are you going to do with a sand pile? Well, you're going to play in it, of course. And here's one of the many wood piles. Look how neat that turned out. I know you've been messing around with doing wood piles.
Yes, it's actually fun to make little pieces of wood.
It is, and there's a certain knack to doing it. Now there's a train parked here in front of the hotel, and it's a fully functional train, but Steve has tied it down so it won't go anywhere. The plan isn't to operate it anymore, in spite of the fact that it runs really well. Has these 2 freight cars, a center flow hopper. Steve Scratch built a whole bunch of these for the 3-foot gauge railroad and called them the Phoenix and Durango, or the Phoenix Durango. The name was drawn from Atlas Shrugs by Ayn Rand. Al was an Ayn Rand, anyway, whatever.
Kind of guy.
And here's the Phoenix and Durango caboose, and that turned out so neat. It is, of course, made of plastic, in spite of the fact that it really looks like it's made of wood. Steve and Al both made the neatest looking plastic rolling stock and structures that you would just swear were actually made of wood.
I love this little caboose. It looks like a little house. It's just darling.
Well, you have a thing about cabooses.
I do.
The locomotive was built out of a Bachmann Mogul, an On30 Mogul, and Steve and Al worked on this together and knocked the wheels out to make it a 36-inch gauge. They changed it up quite a bit and made it look like a somewhat different locomotive. And boy, did they get that thing running smooth. Has a DCC digital controller. It's sort of a shame that it's now screwed in place. Al did the figure here, and that turned out so good. He was so proud of the way that figure turned out. Apparently, it's loosely based on an actual Utah Central locomotive. Al explained it to me, but it was unfortunately in one ear and out the other. J.W. Young was the owner of the Utah Central, one of Brigham Young's sons, John Young, who built all the different railroads.
I like the people sitting here. It looks like they're deep in conversation and just enjoying themselves, and the dog, of course, is sleeping.
Yeah, everywhere you look, Steve loves to populate these things with lots of figures, and not just figures, but little scenes.
Yes.
Where you can see that these guys have a checkerboard, set up, and they're playing a game, and somebody over here selling somebody some life insurance, I don't know exactly what. A person here confused about the train schedule. That's me. I can never read a schedule. Well, we know what this guy's been doing. Over at the old two-holer.
His and hers.
Now, Nora is a dog person and loves to see animals rescued, and she wanted a dog pound with some people rescuing dogs. So that was
cool.
That was included by Steve on the original Shoehorn Gulch, and so of course that had to go on to her diorama because it was kind of her idea. Now, as with all of Steve's structures, everything got very elaborate interiors and lighting. And so this thing takes on a whole new life after the shadows fall and Steve switches on all the lights. It's just amazing. It's like a whole different diorama. Well, anyway, as I say, it's in Las Vegas now. She packed it up and took it with her, and it now lives in Las Vegas. It turned out so nice.
Oh, it did.
Just a beautiful, beautiful thing. The second diorama, and Steve went on to build the third diorama, which is under construction now.
That one's neat.
That one's really neat, in part because we get to keep it.
That one's really cool.
This one's for us. This is High Street. There's two big cities on the railroad, and the railroad kind of connects them. Tabiona, which is the seaport, and Ironton up in the mountains. And this was part of Ironton, High Street on Ironton. One of the most interesting parts of Ironton was the underground. It has basements.
I love that part.
Al joined in by building a Phantom of the Opera to go down here.
Why does this remind me of Harry Potter?
Well, as a matter of fact, that's Gringotts right there. It was an investment bank and it went out of business, and then Al put up a sign saying it's now under new management. It's Gringotts.
Oh, gee.
So that's where you go to get your magic wands, I guess.
Oh.
Now there's a steam engine down here that runs an entire machine shop. I have to say that I am responsible for that mess. I built the little steam engine and the machine shop. I just thought it would be really fun to do. Now there's another area called Lower Ironton that was behind all of these buildings, and you could never see it when it was on the railroad. There was just no way to get your head in there to see it at all. Now that it's a diorama, it's really easy to see the area called Lower Ironton. I did get some photographs of it once by dropping my cell phone in there on a selfie stick, but that was the only way you could see this stuff before. And up above the basements is the actual High Street, which includes a 30-inch gauge tram and Madame Wu's photography studio.
Yes.
Now, the reason I built that steam engine was to run the forge and the machine shop down here. So I built this entire forge and machine shop underneath, so it goes on the diorama too. Now, this building was inspired by Jim Vale, who just recently passed away. Steve started on a duplicate of one of his buildings, just never actually finished it. This is the original High Street.
Oh, yeah.
The diorama is actually its third life. I built the original High Street on the MRS railroad, and when we had to tear that railroad down in 2009, Steve boxed the whole thing up and took it to his railroad. My version included a 30-inch gauge horse trolley. Notice Madame Wu's here. Steve built that. He said that was my photography studio, because back then I called my video production company Madame Wu Video. Here's Steve rebuilding High Street onto his railroad. He moved most of the structures over here, not all, and then he built some new structures to go along with it. He also made the horse trolley into a functional street railroad because he wanted to operate it. And he rebuilt Madame Wu's. It mostly came out intact. And he added this fun building, High Street News, a little newsstand. And this little teeny structure ended up stealing the whole show. And it's featured on the diorama as well. So Steve has started on the diorama rebuild, but that's on hold right now because tomorrow he goes under the knife. He's getting his new hip tomorrow. So we'll have to get back to all of this demolition and rebuilding as he heals. But High Street no longer looks much like High Street. It looks like a demolition zone. And it's sad to see, but it's exciting to see too. It's a mixed blessing. Well, those are two neat dioramas.
Oh my gosh, I'm just impressed.
And of course the one goes to us, so
yeah,
holy cow.
We've got to find a special spot for it.
Yeah, we're figuring out what in the world we're going to...
Build a coffee table. It's got to be a conversation piece.
I don't know that he'll get it done before the surgery, but that's his goal, is to try to get that one finished before he goes under the knife, as they say. And then we'll just see what happens with the surgery, and we'll update you with the surgery as all of that goes forward. He may be out tap dancing the rest of us. Yeah, he might start rebuilding the railroad for all we know.
Yeah, and everybody else's railroad while they're at it.
Because he likes that. He'll be looking at all these big gaping holes that he's created going, ooh, new areas I can fill in with more stuff.
Very well, maybe.
Wouldn't surprise me on any level.
Yep.
Well, if you haven't been over to the channel, do pop on over to the channel. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. It helps us out and it'll help you out, because then you'll get notified when we upload something, which sometimes is spontaneous. Every once in a while we just throw something
very
out there.
spontaneous.
So you wanna be notified when that happens. And the easy way to become a subscriber so that you have a little notification bell that you can click to be notified is to click the blue button. Are you ready? Zoing! That button right there says subscribe, means what it says.
It does.
Well, we're not sure how you found this movie on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring, and we will see you here again in a few days with a collecting show.
Right.
See you then.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.